right, today we're diving into a fascinating source that lays out a really stark choice in the crypto world, Pulse Zenfri versus the ProveX sacrifice. But this isn't just about comparing two different assets. It's really about two competing philosophies, a story about what the source calls a mathematical destiny.
Right off the bat, you can tell this source has a pretty unique vibe. It's not just going to be charts and numbers, it's trying to get at a deeper truth. And that truth, as this quote kind of hints, is all about the pure, undeniable power of math. So the way this is framed is like a tale of two paths, right? Each path leads to a totally different financial future, and each one is ruled by its own set of mathematical laws. So let's break them down and see what the numbers say. Okay, so first up, we have the path of Pulse Zen. The source presents this one as the path of slow, steady, and most importantly, relentless power. The power of compounding growth. So what's the deal with Pulse Zen, according to this text? Well, it's what's called a yielding asset. It has this pay-it-forward thing going on, where a tiny slice of every transaction gets automatically sent back to all the people holding the token. The whole idea is that it just grows on its own. It's all about rewarding patience. And here is the big number that the source really hones in on. Roughly an 18% APY. And it makes a huge point of saying this isn't some temporary thing. This yield is a core feature, something that's always working for you in the background, no matter if the price is going up, down, or sideways.
Okay, so to really show you what this means, the source actually runs the numbers for us. It uses a pretty standard compounding formula. Let's say you start with a $10,000 principal, you apply that 18% rate, and you let it compound every single day for 3 years. So what does that look like? And check this out. Just from that math alone, you get a gain of over $7,000. Now, the really crucial thing to get here is that this growth has nothing to do with market hype. This is based entirely on that yield mechanism. This projection assumes the actual price of the token goes absolutely nowhere. But come on, we're talking about crypto, right? Prices almost never stay flat. So what the analysis does next is it takes that compounding yield and layers a few price growth scenarios on top of it. So in this first scenario, the text imagines a 10x price jump, which it says is just a return to where it was before. And boom, that initial 10 grand, when you combine the compounding with the price growth, could become over $171,000. And this is where it gets really wild. In a scenario the source calls a modest microcap run, a 25x increase, that same investment could climb to nearly $500,000. This is the source's big aha moment, showing what happens when you combine a steady mathematical yield with explosive market dynamics. All right, let's switch gears. Now we're going to look at the second path described in the source. This is the ProveX sacrifice. And as you're about to see, this is a completely different ballgame, one based on what it calls speculative faith instead of compounding math. And yeah, this slide just lays it all out, side by side. The contrast is, well, it's pretty stark, isn't it? Pulse Zen has its APY, the compounding, the burns to reduce supply, all these built-in mechanics. ProveX, on the other hand, has none of that. Zero APY, no compounding, no burns. It's a fundamentally different beast. The source calls this slide the sacrifice reality check. So a sacrifice, if you're not familiar, is when you send money to a project before it even launches, hoping to get tokens later. In this case, you give up your funds for something called cores, and then you wait. There's no yield while you're waiting, no guarantee of liquidity at launch. The value is 100% dependent on pure market hype once it goes live. And this is a huge point the text makes. Since a sacrifice is all about social hype, you've got to look at the community vibe. And the verdict here? The source says it seems pretty lukewarm. That's not exactly the roaring fire you'd want to see. And it's not just a feeling. They've got some data to back this up. Total amount sacrificed? Just over 40 grand. The average person's contribution? About $108. In the high-stakes world of crypto launches, those numbers, they don't exactly scream massive hype. So what could a $10,000 bet on ProveX turn into? Well, the source models it out. In a bad scenario, that 10 grand could shrivel to just a few thousand. A typical launch might get you a decent 3 to 5x gain, but to see that huge return, you'd need an absolute miracle, a massive outlier event, just to hit 200,000. Okay, so this is what it's all been leading up to, the climax of the whole analysis. Now we get to see these two very different paths go head-to-head, directly against each other in a final showdown. And here it is, all laid out on one table.
Just look at the Pulse Zen rows. Even if the price does absolutely nothing, you're up over 7 grand. Then it just scales up from there. Now compare that to ProveX. The path starts with a potential massive loss and requires a complete moonshot just to hit 200K, which is still less than half of Pulse Zen's best-case scenario here. The numbers speak for themselves. And this really gets to the heart of what this source is arguing. It's not just about which coin is better. It's about two totally different ideas about how value is created. Is it the cold, hard logic of math, or is it the unpredictable emotion of hype? I love how the text puts it here. It's so poetic. It says, the path of Zen compounds without your permission and grows while you sleep. The path of sacrifice, on the other hand, speculates without your protection. Its growth depends entirely on whether the crowd screams. And then comes the final verdict from the source. There's no ambiguity here, no mincing words. It makes a bold, absolute statement. The mathematics of compounding defeats the mathematics of hype every single time. This really just boils the entire argument down into two simple, powerful ideas. Pulse Zen is presented as a way to turn the mere passage of time into actual tangible wealth. The ProveX sacrifice? Well, that's a process of turning your existing wealth into hope. And so, the source material ends by flipping the central question back to the reader. And now, back to you. After laying out all the numbers, the philosophies, and the projections, it just leaves you to think about it. Which path do you walk?